Hello, my name is Marissa Voisin, and this is for Communications 101. The speech is entitled Every Child Left Behind. So here's the deal. There will be a test at the end of the presentation. You all take the same test, and if you fail, you can't leave my house. Sound good?
Okay.
Some of you are probably like, hey Marissa, I didn't sign up for this. And others probably have their pens and paper ready and are getting ready to take down their notes. Well, this is the qualm of standardized tests. You either pass, or you don't graduate high school, or you don't get into college, or in this case, you don't leave my house. It doesn't matter if this is your first year, if you have a learning disability. Today we'll be examining the No Child Left Behind Act, how it affects the children, the teachers, and what we can do to solve this issue. On January 8th at Hamilton High School in Hamilton, Ohio, George W. Bush signed into act the No Child Left Behind Act. He told the students, the parents, and the citizens attending, every school has a job to do, and that's to teach the basics and teach them well. If we want to make sure no child is left behind, every child must learn to read, and every child must learn to add and to subtract. Let me give you a brief overview of H.R. 1. It was introduced by Republican John Boehner and co-sponsored by 84 Democrats and Republicans. The bill's provisions were to require all public schools to administer a statewide test. Every year, the schools would have to make an AYP, which is adequate yearly progress to keep its students, its staff, and its funding. The idea behind the bill was to set high, strict standards in hopes of leveling the playing field between privileged white children and low-income children. Sounds great, right? Well, the first major problem, let's start with the first major problem. Remember at the beginning, I mentioned the test does not account for citizenship or learning disabilities. Another part of this is all of our students' achievements are being boiled down to a test score that is only based on 4 areas of education and ignores everything else about a child. Standardized tests only grade you on 4 areas. These are the 4 areas. You have reading, writing, science, and math. If I were to ask you to name things that constitute a successful and well-rounded child, would your answer be a test score? No. Instead, your answers would likely mention Dr. Gerald Bracy's, a well-respected leader in helping to fight for children to succeed. You would recommend his list. Some of them include creativity, resilience, resourcefulness, self-discipline, and honesty. On top of these tests not fully grading a child's achievement, we have the issue that No Child Left Behind Act does not account for a student's learning ability, culture, or background. If you have a learning delay, you are expected to achieve at the same levels as those that do not. If your family just immigrated to America, you are expected to achieve at the same level as if you have lived here your entire life. Teacher Susan Hobart sees this every day. In her essay, No Child Left Behind is harmful and should not be funded, she talks about her experience teaching disadvantaged elementary students. At one point, she says, special education students may not have some accommodations, but they take the same tests and are expected to perform at the same level as general education students. How can that even make sense? That a child who performs at a lower level than her classmates at everything else is expected to pass at reading, writing, science, and math as the students in her same level who perform at a higher level than her. The expectation is not very different than the one we put on our schools. The second problem is we are threatening our schools' funding based on its ability to teach to the test and not to teach and inspire children. Going back to Susan Hobart, she talks about a meeting she had with administrators and who told her the focus in her class should be test taking and not connecting her lesson plans to the children. According to the No Child Left Behind Act, there is an action plan for failing schools. If they miss their AYP for 2 years, they're labeled as in need of improvement. They must develop a 2-year plan for improvement and and students may move to a better school if necessary. So I can't succeed, so you can go, so that way we can continue failing. After 3 years, the schools are forced to offer free tutoring. Who pays for that? And after 4 years, they are labeled as needing corrective action. This also may include replacing staff, introducing new curriculum, or making classes longer. After 5 years, they now have to start developing a plan for restructuring the school. And if they fail for 6 consecutive years, they're going to have to implement these new plans. The plans include closing the schools, turning it into a charter school, which is now legal in Washington State, and hiring a private company or state office to run the school. Instead of accepting this, some schools are choosing to what's called game the system. Gaming the system is when a school encourages a high-risk youth to drop out and then fails to record the dropouts so they don't lose federal funding. If you have less failing students and nobody knows about it, how can you possibly fail when you're teaching your good students how to learn? In an article in the National Journal by Fawn Johnson, she writes about the upcoming deadline to schools that they must meet for the No Child Left Behind Act. And the law's author inserted a 2014 deadline by which all public school students should be at grade level. Schools that don't achieve the goal face punitive consequences. Under the measure, more than 80% of the nation's schools could be labeled as failing next year. While the problem's looming over our students' heads and our schools' heads, how do we fix this? Simple. Let's take the focus off of the test and put it back on the children. To do this, we need to provide better funding so teachers and staff can focus on children and focus on their lesson plans. We need to reward the good teachers, the ones that put passion into their work. And then we need to work with struggling teachers. We need to make sure that we're not only improving education for our children, but we're improving individual grades as well. Look, the legislators believe what they're doing is right. They wouldn't have done this if they didn't think this wasn't helping. But the No Child Left Behind Act is improving students' ability. This is what they believe. In core areas, when in global comparison, we're ranked number 15 in reading in all the world. We're ranked number 25 in math.
That's too high.
These are not groundbreaking statistics. Certainly not in favor for No Child Left Behind. Now imagine with me a world where kids are excited to go to school. They're eager to learn. They're also excited about reading and about math. But these aren't the only things taught. Imagine an intimate classroom where the teacher feels like she knows her students, where the administration is there to support her. This is the world where we focus on our children as individuals, not as test scores. If you want this, like I want this to change, how they treat our children, how they treat our teachers, we need to let them know that the No Child Left Behind Act has failed us. And we need to implement better techniques so our children will truly not be left behind. And if you would, these are our legislators in Washington State, and you can contact them and tell them.